2, 1. Let's go. Welcome to the Fiction Addiction Podcast, a podcast where we go one-on-one with fiction creators, such as authors, filmmakers, actors, songwriters, and more. Each episode, we get the inside scoop on our guests' creative process, the ups and downs of their industries, and our guests also give out tips and tricks that help them become successful. And now, let's jump into the episode with your host, Chris C.L. Lowry.
All right. Welcome back to the Fiction Addiction Podcast. My next guest is a devoted advocate for young women, sharing her own life experiences, like being a teenage mother of 3 children by the age of 18, overcoming homelessness and domestic violence. Additionally, she is best known for her helping and tenacious spirit and is very comfortable sharing her own life experiences with others on a one-on-one basis to help young women connect to the resources they need. She celebrates the continued success of more than 30 women whose lives she's directly mentored while still achieving her own professional milestones, like graduating with a bachelor's in arts in law and justice from Rider University as an adult learner. She is a professional member of ColorCom Network, a member of Toastmasters, and an author of a self-help book entitled Droppin Jewelz, Guiding Principles to Help Girls Live Their Best Life. Ladies and gentlemen, Kendra Hall. Kendra, what's going on? How you doing?
How are you? Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for being here.
Awesome. I'm excited to be here. This is an amazing time. It's a time of change, a time of, so much is going on in the world today. So I'm just happy to be here with you, discussing life,
Yeah, and speaking of life, first and foremost, we've all started this year, obviously with our goals, with our hopes that 2020 was going to be something special for everyone. And then we were hit with, obviously, the COVID-19 coronavirus, the global pandemic, the lockdown. And then on top of that, the Black community had to witness the deaths of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd recently, which sparked protests around the world, something that we haven't seen to this magnitude in terms of battling racism and injustice from the criminal justice system. So mentally, how are you doing with everything going on?
Wow. And when you put it together like that and it's the one after the other, right? In terms of things that we've been dealing with a lot in 2020. So for me personally, it's been a lot. I mean, I've had some personal losses in the family, just the scene of that in itself, not even less than a month ago, and just from COVID and amongst just being elderly, losing a lot of the elderly people that we've, loved. And they're no longer here to share our wisdom. So I definitely have been trying to stay in alignment with my goals. And it's hard to do when you have so much going on around you and so many different things pulling you in so many different directions. And so, there's just been so much stress, in essence, going on, especially watching the videos of, our people just slaughtered, like in the streets, in essence. And it's just, it hasn't been amazing on my mental health at all. So, absolutely not, absolutely not. It's just and it really, what it does is it sparks something within you to make you want to do something right now, to make you want to spark that change immediately. And so what I've been trying to do now is to meditate. Today I spent about a couple hours actually just meditating and looking for clarity. I think that sometimes with all that's going on, we have it's hard to find the clarity in the situation and to think clearly, period. And so I think that right now it's just the point for me to get my mind fully back on track, because this has been just a whirlwind. It has been a whirlwind. Definitely a shocker. But what can you expect? This is life, and so much can happen in life. And it's just been crazy. How have you been?
The same way, trying to process it all while, you know what I mean, while being active, while obviously making sure I'm whether it's getting out and voting, whether it's getting out protesting, whether it's signing the petitions for obviously the justice, the having these people brought to justice in the different states. It's a lot, you know what I mean? And then obviously it's during the pandemic, so it's like we still have to do the social distancing and the quarantines and things like that. So
Right.
definitely a lot.
If you call for anything, now you're scared. You're
Right. Oh,
watching yourself
absolutely. Yeah.
extra hard. Hiccups is
Absolutely.
like, oh no, is it is it me this time? You just don't know.
Right. Just don't know.
It's a time. It is, you don't, and it's a time of uncertainty. However, one thing I stand strong on is my faith in God, and I know that nothing happens without a reason. Everything happens for a purpose, a greater purpose. And that's what I've been standing strong on and firm on during this time. I mean, what else can you really do beyond, like you said, taking the actions that you know are true to your heart? And at that point, prayer. You've done all that you can physically do. You've done all that you can mentally do at this time. So it's just really the point now to try to use all of the energy that I have for the good. It's not, and also to I'm big on self-love. At the same time, it's time to really focus more on loving your neighbor today. This is the time to do that, and to really look at what people are going through, and in the eyes of empathy, with empathetic eyes, with an empathetic heart, and once you're able to do that, I think that life is starting to clear up, more and more for me when I'm starting to look at things, slower, with less rage, because it's been just watching George Floyd. Just the video alone has just it's really brought me to a point of, wow, is what's really out here? What is really going on right now? And fully, we may have known and what was really going on, but we've all been living in this little bubble, I think, right? Like kind of our own little circle. And not really paying attention to everybody else, because it just is like, okay, all right, I'm just trying to make it through the day. But when something like this happens, you're ripped from your reality, your everyday reality, and you're forced to really take a good look in the mirror. Number one, and number two, you are focused on making sure that your neighbor is okay. That I think that's where we're at now. That's where we're at. We're at the point where it's like, hey, we need to make sure that we're okay, because we really are all that we have. That is the truth. That is a true statement. That it is. So it's really just about being focused right now. And then I'm writing the second book, and in writing this book, I need to make sure that I am focused on what God wants me to focus on, not what the world wants me to focus on. So that's another, component, making sure that when you're writing, your mind is clear, and it's what, it's what the true message should be. So it's been fun. I say that sarcastically.
So along with writing, obviously you're a mentor. So how have you had to adjust things? Because obviously with the social distancing and the quarantine, obviously so many people are affected. Obviously we had the Zoom meetings and things like that, but things just aren't the same. So how have you been affected in your mentorship?
I believe the mentorship is definitely affected with COVID. However, it's affected also in a good way to where is that people are home. Whereas some of my
Right.
mentees, where they were, um, you know, going just kind of going in a circle in a lot of ways of just kind of school, work, home, and or just not really being able to focus on themselves. This has given them the time to be able to really look at what their needs are. And also, I've noticed a couple mentees have been able to reassess their goals, because now it's more into the artificial intelligence, virtual reality,
Yeah.
virtual world. In terms of what their life goals are, so I think it's been good for some of the mentees that I've had, for I'd say majority of them, um, only because they're able to really take a bit of a pause. Now, with
Mm.
all that's happened right now, obviously they can't take a pause. But prior to um, the second pandemic, in essence, if you want to call it that,
Right.
with Mr. Floyd, it's like, come on, now it's a different type of thought process for them. But when COVID hit, at first, I believe a lot of people that I was speaking to on a daily basis were, more heartbroken. And then it became, wow, okay, a month into it, they started to really reassess and say, you know what, I can take this time and utilize it for good. So,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's what, yeah, and exactly. And that's what I push. I think that's important to do. Take this time, utilize it to build yourself in ways that you may not even have thought. Meditate, exercise. A lot of, I would say maybe two or three mentees wanted a better exercise routine. This allowed them to, COVID, as horrible as it's been, but just kind of grounding people at home has allowed them to kind of start a better workout routine as well. So, it's really how you utilize your time. That's kind of how I look at it. And every
Right.
every moment counts.
And you said something interesting, and you brought meditation up quite a few times. How important is meditation, exercise, and prayer at a time like this?
I think it's essential. It's essential because meditation in itself provides you with clarity. It helps you to decipher the voice or voices in your head, to be able to think clearly and figure out where they're coming from. I did a meditation today, and I'm going to give you a little a little dose of it, whether you ask for it or not. But I did a meditation today. I found it through the monastic academy, and I'm absolutely enamored by the monastic academy. If you ever went to Google that name, and they're based out of Vermont, and just their podcasts alone are amazing. They talk about so many issues that promote growth, and mentally, ways to really level you up and help you to think outside of the box. So, and I mentioned that only to say I got this meditation from the Monastic Academy. And so how it starts out is really you starting to figure out, are you physically, uh, regardless of where you are physically, how do you feel? Are you in the world, or are you in your mind? So that's the first part of the meditation.
Mm,
And that's a good question. Sometimes we don't think about that. Where are we? Are we here?
right.
Are we physically present? Because a lot of times we're in our head, or are we in our head? Figuring it out that first. The second part of that is to start to say these simple wordings like feeling, seeing, hearing. And as you start to say that within a rhythm, seeing, feeling, hearing, go along with that, and start to figure out where these senses are coming from. How are you feeling? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? These are ways to really bring you to the present, and figure out what these voices, what this voices, or what this voice is, or what is something that you're seeing that you may feel like is this, is something that's a synchronicity. There's something that's going on. A lot of times we'll see numbers that are 333, or
Hmm.
we'll see 77. There's so many different. We'll see these different signs, or we'll see a robin or something outside, or we'll see a we'll see whatever it is, and we'll say, oh, wow, this reminds me of this. Maybe it's a symbol, but we don't know if it's real, right? We're like, hold on, this is it. This is my sign. You know what I mean? We're waiting. A lot of times we're waiting for this sign to say from the universe to say, this is the right path, right? We're waiting for this something to maybe we'll hear, something we'll see, and whatever it is, we need to find the clarity to be able to decipher where that is coming from. Is it coming from your feeling, hearing, seeing? And once you're able to kind of locate that of where that feeling is or hearing or seeing where that is coming from, you start to focus in on it. So if I'm seeing, let's say if I see in my mind all of a sudden a parrot, in essence, focus on that parrot. Focus everything on it intensely so you can get to the message. Where is this? What is this leading me to? And as opposed to just being a passing, fleeting thought, because we need to really figure out what are the messages that the universe is giving us and make sense of it. And a lot of times we suffer because we feel like, wow, if we were able to really just kind of get the message, we're missing something. And a lot of it is because we lack the discipline in order to find the clarity. And so that's where the meditation comes in. And it gives us the discipline to find the clarity in our thoughts, our feelings, our mind, all of those spiritual, it's no real balance in essence, but, some type of, some type of comfort in essence. We need to find that some type of comfort within our own spirit. And that is what meditation does. As far as exercise, what exercise to me does is it releases the stress in my body. A lot of times we're stressed out. We'll find ourselves clenching our teeth or doing something to where that isn't helpful to us because we have built up stress. Just watching television will give you built up stress, right?
Oh, yes, guaranteed.
Listen, this is the most news I've ever watched in my life.
Right.
Seriously, I don't even watch the news. So usually, what exercise does is it helps you to eliminate the toxins in your body. It helps to clear your mind, clear the stress out. And we need to do that daily, period. It's non-negotiable. Our body needs it. It's just like drinking water. If you're not drinking a gallon of water a day, you're literally, starving yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like you're putting yourself in it. You're not loving yourself when you're not taking care of the body that God's giving you to take care of. So meditation, exercise is extremely important, and prayer. Now, prayer is number one. Prayer is number one because God is number one. And so prayer is it. Prayer is the first thing that I do in the morning is the same thing at night, is during the day. Because prayer, what it does, it keeps you aligned with what God wants for you. It helps you to stay focused. And also I believe it helps you to stay humble, especially if you're coming to God with a humble heart. It helps you to stay in alignment and understand that He's God. You're not God. He's above. You know what I mean? And just keeps it in the right space. Because I think a lot of times, yes, we have we have free will, but God wants to be the one to the choice of who we follow, who we give our time to. He wants us to give He wants us to not give our time all day to the television, all day to other elements, people, things, places. He wants us to spend time with Him on a daily basis. So you definitely have to align yourself in order to at least start to experience true love. That's what prayer is. Prayer is love to me. Right. That's me. My time with God. That's the only one, honestly. And I always say this, and people are like, "Oh, do you really feel like this?" I do. And I feel like that God's the only person, the only source that is going to be able to give you unlimited love, real love, true love, because human love is conditional. No matter how we say it, it is conditional. Okay. It's the only, who else are you going to go to? Who else are you going to go to but God? I can't think of anything else that I will, or any place I'd rather be than to be in quiet worship with God, because that's the center. That's the center of my life, period.
Mm.
So, that those three elements really help to offset some of the some of the world's woes. I can't. I it's easy if you're fully into the world to take on all of its, all of the things of the world on your back, in essence, on a daily basis. But with God, that you can give it to Him. You do all that you can do, and then you give it to Him, and then you can let it go. And I think that's the real theme for 2020 is let it go. Let go what's no longer working. Let go what is hurting you, what's useless. Let go of all the distractions, and come to focus on loving, and love, which is God. So.
Mm. So, what role has writing played in your life?
Writing's played a significant part of my life because I've loved to write since I was young. I was one
Really?
of those people who, yes, I was one of those young kids who I would have I used to write poetry a lot. I was a huge, and I still love poetry. But I used to write poetry. It would be like published in remember the highlights magazines, and as when you were a kid. So I used to be so hyped. I got at least like 3 or 4 poems put in, highlight in the highlights magazine when I was little, like
Nice.
it's always been a huge part for me. Even as in college, I was a part of I was actually a editor for the Law and Justice, the Law Journal, actually, for my college, and actually also the editor for my minor was American Studies, so I was the editor for the American Studies newsletter as well. So just over time, it's just kind of transitioned into other things, and I always had a diary. That's another thing. So now I got it, and I did get the diary stolen a couple times, but
Yeah, the one with the lock on it.
Listen, yes. And so I've always had a diary. I've always loved to write. My mother is my mother's a retired school teacher, so growing up when my mother was in the throes of teaching, and she just and my parents, a little bit of background. My parents did not play. I mean, I've been on my own since I was 13, but prior to that, I came from a 2-parent household, and my parents they both had their master's degree. And they were all about education. Okay. When I tell you there was school after school, after school, after school, there was
Really?
school. This was, yes. So it worked out well for, like my siblings. I have 2 siblings that went to Princeton, one that went to Wharton, so it worked out well for my siblings in essence, because they stuck to that rigorous, school schedule in essence. For me, I was like that. I was quiet. It was a quiet rebellion. So, although I was, I did well in school and all of that, that was not, my focus at the time. But it helped me, just having that experience early on, prior to me being out on my own, with having my parents really focused on education and forcing me to read the encyclopedias and write these long essays and all of these things that they would make me do, and these surprise book bag, all the things that they did, surprise book bag checks, the extra, the Kuman. I don't know if are you familiar with Kuman?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so Kuman lifestyle. Okay, this is repetitive work. Tiger moms, tiger mom land. And so so when you have parents, and my father didn't play at all. So when you have parents who are very disciplined and they expect structure, it definitely very early on, those lessons stuck with me. And so I and also I had to read. There was no there was no option. I had to do every summer when I was living with my parents. I had to do the library book reading thing where you had to read 100 books or so, as a team and all these things. Get your pizza party. So it was so much. And then on top of that, I was very active in my church, as well as a million other. And this is not, and I'm being facetious when I say a million, but so many extracurricular activities. All these things were very helpful in making me well-rounded enough to be able to take my education to another level. I think when you don't have some of those experiences or those types of influences in your life, it makes it a little bit harder, a lot harder for you to be disciplined, and to take that time out to even write. You know what I mean? Like, it's just
Right.
even to read, just to have that discipline to sit when you're not used to sitting or studying and all of those things. It's harder to do. So it's just kind of one of those things where, because I was trained early and I thankfully loved it. And I really didn't have much TV I could watch anyway. So it wasn't like it was no TV like that. So, I had to kind of pick up the book and make sure that, and that was my movie. My books were my movies as a kid. And so, it kind of was not too far off for me to start writing. And as I went around and started to meet more people, I realized that there's some stories that need to be told. There's some lessons that I need to share.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Wow, and so it's definitely been a journey and a journey into changing even the structure of my writing and how I write. Um, um, so that's changed too over time. Like, this has been a metamorphosis as far as how I write. Like, before I wrote more like, my background is law and justice. So before I wrote a lot of legal type of writings, right before writing my book. So I really had to switch the style up.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're going from legal right into
Yes.
absolutely.
So it's been interesting. It's been a journey. It's been its own journey, but I'm excited. I'm excited about it. I love the fact that I'm able to share with others, and that it's been helpful. And I think that that's been the most important part of this, is that it's made a change, and I know at least one person or two people through. It's been a nice
Yep.
Uplifting experience at the end of the day. It was hard to put a lot of these things in writing that I went through, and some of these lessons, because they were really, really hard lessons that I put in the book. But I feel like it's definitely been helpful, because somebody needed to hear that,
Yeah.
and I got that feedback before. And so, that in itself has made me feel like, wow, this is, I'm on the right path. This is what God wants me to do.
Mm-hmm. Now, how did you get from obviously a young girl writing this poetry to becoming an author?
So here's how it happened. I knew I wanted to write the book, or a book. I have been saying that for some time. When I was about 16, I was in a domestic violence shelter, and I met this another young woman. She was a couple years older than me at the time. And she had such a powerful story that I told myself also that I was like, I have to share this girl's story. Her story was just super, super and super, super powerful. And little did I know, after telling her story, that we would become like the best of friends. And, and so some of the lessons that she's taught me were so helpful and so thought out, well thought, that I wanted to also make sure I share them, because she wound up passing away.
Wow.
So I really, knowing, because she passed away, and like, that was my girl. Like, she passed away in childbirth, and we were pregnant at the same time, and we were actually going to get a house together. It was bad. Like, it was a bad experience for me. It's like, the whole experience of her passing away really just tore me apart. Especially knowing that we were both pregnant. I literally saw her like a couple of days before. And then there was a hospital error, and that's how she passed, actually.
Wow.
So, another Black woman not being heard in the hospital. She was saying she was in pain and things weren't happening for her. And so, that really, that hit me. And I said, you know what? I made a vow that I was going to tell her story too. Like that was huge for me. And I did not um, want to let her down. Like, so the first book was definitely, and I dedicated it to her, Andrea. I dedicated my book. That's in the front of the book. Like, I
Mm.
mean, I had to really put her story out there. I had to put some of the lessons she taught me, and I wanted to make sure that she was honored. So that honestly was like, even though I wanted to help, and I definitely that in the lessons but I truly, truly also wanted to make sure that my girl, had her voice out there, that she just didn't just pass and not
Right.
have,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
not have a legacy in that way. Because she definitely had a lot of knowledge, to be so young in her early 20s actually, but she had been through something that maybe,
Wow.
somebody went through at maybe 80. She had been through a
Mm.
lot. And I touch on that in my book as well. So her experience. So it's that definitely made a big change in terms of the push of wanting to
Right.
get this done, and wanting to get it done, uh, and also to start to really teach, start to really to teach the youth in a different way. It's
Mm.
different than me telling my story verbally, than it is when you write it on paper. It's a different type of experience because now you're really imagining it. Now it's its own movie, as opposed to somebody just telling you.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can take your
Yep.
time and really mull over the words in essence. So, um, it's definitely been uh, a roller coaster, but it's been a very rewarding one, and I feel so blessed to be able to to tell her story, and to be able to share the lessons that I've learned so far.
Now you have this story.
Hmm.
Walk me through your publishing journey.
Oh, so the publishing journey was very interesting. I knew I was writing, right? I knew I had to write, and how do I get to the book? Right? You have this content, and you have a message, and you want to get it into a point there where it looks great. So what I did was I actually I'm a researcher. It's not surprising. I do uh, low key nerd. I do like to research. So I know it sounds so bad to sometimes. I'm like, it's not boring to me. So, so
Right.
I was
It probably
researching,
actually
and
helped.
it did. It really did. So I sat, and I literally researched. And I was like, and I prayed, and I was like, how am I going to make this work? And I started to find book publishing companies. Then I started to look into self-publishing and all of those things, and looking at the financial rewards of both, right? I spoke seriously with a couple publishers, and I had pitched my story to, and I did not like the amount. I wanted to be able to own my own stuff. I
Mm.
didn't like the money. I didn't like the cap on the money in essence. So for me, I decided to go in a way to where well, I need somebody to just kind of help me to get the book popped off in essence, as opposed to taking me on as publishing in essence, right?
Right.
So what because that's the part way before you get to the publishing. You have to get the book you got to get the book together. You got to get it formatted. There's the other things that you have to kind of not, let me not say format it, but just in a style that you want. And you want to keep your voice your own. That's another thing about self-publishing. It allows you to keep your voice your own. As opposed to when you allow other people to come in and they want to really change your stuff up.
Change
It's not
everything.
change everything, and not from an editorial standpoint, because the editor is going to change your work anyway, right? They're going to
Right.
make sure it looks, sounds good, and it's in alignment. But sometimes the publishing companies can have too much oversight, and to, like you said, change it to where it's just almost unrecognizable. And I wanted to keep
Mm.
my voice. So what I did was I went to LinkedIn, which, I started to look at my circle, and I had some
Really?
powerful, yes, absolutely. I made sure that when, I love LinkedIn because it really helps you to connect with people. I made some great connections through LinkedIn, business connections that turned, friendly and turned into friendships and all of that. But first business, right? Because that's where people get on LinkedIn. It's because they want to network for business purposes. And so I found someone named Nikki Woods, and you may remember her from, like, I believe she was on Tom Joyner Morning Show, and a couple other different things. She was into helping you write your book. Hey, do you want to write your book? So I wound up contacting her. She's a fellow Cancer like me. Hi, Cancers. I had to say that. Our birthday's coming. It's almost July. We like instantly clicked, in essence. We chatted it up, and she helped me and so I hired her. To help me to get my 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 creative juices really flowing. And so she would help you to kind of, hey, you know what, I'm having a writer's block, and she would tell you what to do XYZ, give you some tips. Or then I would send her some work, and she would look at it, that type of stuff. Or kind of like, maybe this will be a great direction, or something along the small small but not intrusive ways in order to help you to develop yourself as a writer, right? And the direction, in essence, because it's very easy when you're writing a book to get off topic if you allow yourself to,
yes,
right?
It is.
Okay. So she was really helpful with that. She was integral with that piece. She put me in touch with my editor, who I love, 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 love. I actually posted her on my page, Dr. Angela Massey, who is she's also an ordained minister. So she is powerful. I love her so much. And what Nikki Woods did was she took in consideration of the fact that my book is a faith-based book, right? It's a self-help book, but still faith-based. So she made sure that I was connected with the right editor. And she gave me some choices too. It wasn't right. That's key. It's key. So I had a couple different choices of editors, right? Different variations, different people, different styles. And I was able to speak with several different editors, which were, amazing, amazing editors, amazing resources. So it's really, to me, it was finding the right people to connect with in order to find the right resources to make this book happen. Because what I didn't want to do is to prolong it. I wrote the book within a year, less than a year, and literally off of 2 hours of sleep every day.
Oh, really?
Seriously, yes. I was not, because I had to work. I work full time. I work for the state. So I work full time, crazy busy job. And then I had to, come back and deal with my household. And then I had to write. And and if you don't put yourself on a schedule, that it's not going to be forever, right? Like let's say if you're pregnant, your pregnancy is not going to last forever. At a certain amount of time, you're going to have to give birth. You know what I mean? And it's yes, you got to keep. So you have to keep moving when you're writing. And I didn't want to just kind of let this linger on. I hear some people have, and there's nothing wrong with it if that's how you want to do. Other people want to do it, but I heard of some people who have been writing a book for 10 years. Oh, I write a page a day. All right, cool. That's your thing. But for me, I knew that I had a different timeline. Right. And I wanted to get it done. So that's why I did the 2 hours. I'm not suggesting anybody else do that. Because I've been running off of 2 hours of sleep since I was a teenager, literally, back and forth, maybe a sleep day when I'm just kind of, my body shuts off. But, that's just kind of been my way since I was young.
Everybody not built like that.
No, they're not. They're not. You're like, not me, because I'm need to get my sleep. He's like, I'm gonna get my sleep.
That's that hustle mentality right there, man.
Yeah, it is. It's true. Like, it's for real. Like, and when you have that mentality, it's hard to let that go because you feel like you're slipping. And that's another thing I had to digress from too, like my perfectionism. I've realized as more and more as I wrote, I'm like, ooh, I have I like things to be, I like things to be a certain quality, but then sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm getting it too, you don't want to get too crazy with your work, because otherwise you're going to be overly critical and it'll never come out because you're waiting for this perfection, right? No matter if you have an editor, you're going to have a couple typos. It doesn't matter, right? You keep fixing it, right?
Yeah.
So no matter, right, exactly. So no matter if you have this may be off, or because on top of the book, there's a whole bunch of other things that come along with it. Your graphics, your cover, all of those things. You need a separate graphic designer if you want to cover a certain way, right? So there's other components that come along with this whole book. Publishing and the way that it's going, and then the upload. How are you going to what places do you want to have your book at? Do you want to have your book at this particular place? Because know that they only take they publish your books, publishing house types of books and all of that. So just really kind of knowing all of the ins and outs is part of it, and that's why I definitely recommend finding, and I definitely recommend Nikki Woods. I'm not sure if she's still doing it. I'm sure she is. She's amazing. But if someone needs some information, feel free to contact me. I'm sure I'll give my information at the end of of our podcast. But definitely I've been sharing my information. I'm not stingy with it. I feel like it's important to be able to help one another. So, if you guys are interested in publishing a book, even yourself, then, definitely I will be a resource for you. So
Nice.
Yeah.
Now we talked about the hustle mentality that you have already. Obviously, being an independent author, you have to have that. It is a lot of work. Like you said, you got to find graphic designers, editors. You gotta do a lot of research to ensure that you were doing right by yourself, by your brand, and by your books. Did you know how much work, or did you anticipate how much work had to be put in before you actually published?
No. Would I say no? No. There were times, and beyond that, it's an emotional toll. It is. It's beyond the physical, where you feel like you just want to fall out and you just want to have a kid tantrum like a kid and throw stuff around like, no, right. I can't do this anymore. It's like it's crazy, because for me, like, it was fine with the no sleep. I can deal with that. I can, I'm fine with that. The problem was I had to go back in time and to pull up experiences that were very, very traumatic, like post-traumatic stress syndrome was like kicking at me, like, hold on now, PTSD basically.
Right.
So really just having to be able to, it was cathartic to be able to share my experiences. And, when you're going through that process, you don't realize sometimes that the power of your own words, that in itself is something that can kind of take you aback. When you read something and it's like, "Ooh, I wrote this." I need to maybe take care, pay attention myself. Like, what's God trying to tell me? Like, this came out, for me. So it was also enlightening for myself to really read some of my own words at times, because sometimes you give advice to others and you have to take it. So just making sure that I was in alignment with my words, and also to kind of push through the feeling of dread of going back in time to relive horrible experiences, in essence. But I know that it was for a greater good, right? I knew that I had to, because somebody else needed the story in order to be able to relate and understand that I know where you're coming from. I can't hide that these things happen, because now I'm not helping. This is not testimony service. You're not giving a testimony, right?
Right.
So, yep. Like, hold on. Don't give no half testimony. Come up there and say the right thing. Say what's on your heart. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So I was, I had to go back to the hot church in my mind, testimony service, when you got to get up and, say your piece, say what's really going on. I had to push through it and push through that feeling of, you know what? I got to say it. It was fine verbally, but when you have certain things on paper and you got to keep reading it over just because it's got to make sense in the book, you know what I mean? it's hard. That's the hard part. That was hard for me. When the book was done, I didn't read the book. I didn't read the book for I would say I got the test book. I didn't read the book for maybe a week. I started to read it and then I threw the book across the room because
absolutely.
the experience of some of the stuff, like to read it back, I was mad. I was like, no. Then I was like, what is, then it became like, okay, what is going on? Why do I feel this particular way? And then all of a sudden it seemed, as I started to pray and really meditate, I was like, wow, I needed this. I needed to write this book because for me, you know what I mean? On top of other people, just for me. So I feel like it's just been a very, it's been a mentally, invigorating, let's say, experience. Say that.
Now, when did you realize you were ready to share your story with the world?
I've been sharing it with the world, in essence, slowly. I have an each one teach one mentality. So each person I talk to that, or even the women that I mentor, I was still sharing the story, and who knows how many times that they shared that story. So I felt like I was already sharing it in essence with the world, but on this particular grand scale, what made me, and to whereas I wanted to put in a book format is because I feel like on top of the fact it's going to reach more people, it's a legacy. I'm leaving a legacy. When I think of all the authors that I've read over since I was a young girl, oh my goodness, like, I'm going back to poetry, right? Langston Hughes, and, like there's just been so many, there's just been so many books that I've read that made an impact that sometimes just talking to somebody doesn't get that point across. Right. So I wanted to be able to express myself in a different format, in a way that but maybe even surprise myself. And so that part was pretty exciting in its own way, to be able to look at, to be able to communicate in a different way. Right. And that's outside of your not fully inside your comfort zone. So it really it was challenging. And I feel like I'm one of those people who likes to challenge themselves. So, I like, that's my excitement, right? I like excitement.
Right.
That's my excitement, is challenging myself to try to do something, more. And so for me, like I said, I wanted to write this book for some time, definitely after, Andrea, my friend Andrea passing and all of that. But to get to this point, I really had to, just be focused. I had to get focused and understand that I'm communicating in a totally different way. And it's not, and I'm mixing also lessons in, because I have lessons in the book mixed in with, a storyline, because I feel like that's the best way that people learn is if, you're kind of giving the people like a story, right? But you got to tie it in with some truth, some lessons in there, right? That's going to really take it home. And so this book really does that. So I feel like, and in a way that me speaking to a person, I don't know if that would have that same effect.
You're also a member of ColorCom Network and Toastmasters. For those who don't know, what are those organizations and what got you into them?
So ColorCom, I'm trying to think, how did I get into ColorCom? My goodness, it's been so many years. So I'm not sure I'm not sure. I believe I was recommended to ColorCom by one of my, friends from New York, at the time. And, she was, I was at the time, I was going to a lot of networking events and so on and so forth. And, I'm pretty sure I met someone who told me about ColorCom and how great the organization is. And what it is it's a network of women of color, and we come together. We support one another. We support our celebrations. We have, different resources. We have workshops. We have conferences, all based on, enriching and, making sure that women of color are seen and heard, and that we can prosper and in business and in life, and it's in general. So it's a great supportive network. And, it's a wonderful professional organization. So that's one organization I'm a part of, as well as Toastmasters, which is, and I can say kind of, simply put, and as it's oratory, it's orator. So basically, it's teaching you how to speak publicly, or in order to be able to go out. If I'm going to go out and speak to people, I need to be able to talk and to project my voice. And I think that training is key to practice makes perfect. So, and it's a great organization, Toastmasters, to help you to learn public speaking, to help you to practice, to help you to have camaraderie, and to also to meet new people. Great way to network for people who want to uh, to 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 get that type of confidence, to feel like they can go out and speak and do a present, give a presentation, or just strengthen their communication style. So
Right.
that's what Toastmasters does, and it's a great organization. It's all around the country, so it's definitely something to look into. I know that. Um, if you just Google it, you'll find a chapter, I'm sure, in your area. It's a great place, and I highly recommend. It's a great organization. I highly, highly recommend both organizations, but definitely Toastmasters for those who are looking to strengthen their public speaking. It just can be a little scary. I even still get those flutters before it's time to go on and speak. So
Really?
yes, absolutely. I feel like it makes you sharper too. When you go up there, you're a little too confident. Sometimes it doesn't work out well. I think a little bit of nervousness before going on is a good thing. You know what I mean? So, but it's helpful because at least I feel like I have the the wherewithal to be able to hold myself and come up and speak and so forth. And it gives you that type of training. You always want to make sure that you come in prepared. And so
Mm,
what that does is give you that preparation. So yeah, definitely. I highly recommend both. Yeah.
now your book, it is titled Droppin Jewelz, Guiding Principles to Help Girls Live Their Best Life.
Correct. That
So
is
when I
the
jump
title. Mhm.
so when I jump into the synopsis, it says taking care of a child when you're still a child is no easy task. It's even harder when you lack the proper support and mindset to handle the adult challenges of life. You may feel unprepared, scared, lonely, and not know what to do to get your life back on track. In this book, you will meet such a person, Corinne, who became a mother when she was just 14. She was competing for spots in people's lives, not realizing that hers was the only spot that mattered. Corinne's poor choices came with a heavy price, but she learned to use the principles shared in the book to create the best life for herself and her child. Now, first, I would like you just to break down the title for me a little bit more, Dropping Jewels.
I love that you asked that. So you see, I don't know if you. So in the front of the book, there's a picture of me holding a handful of rubies, in essence. So, and that's me.
Yes.
That's wisdom. So the jewels represent wisdom. It's an old term, in essence. Dropping jewels. Dropping is you relating knowledge, relating. Dropping is relating. And the jewels is the knowledge, right? So it's dropping knowledge, giving knowledge, making sure that I'm imparting knowledge to other people. So that's what the jewels represent. Lessons of and wisdom, all of those, I would say.
So you obviously you mentioned your friend was one of the
Mhm.
inspirations behind the book. Were there any other inspirations for writing this book?
There were many inspirations, I would say. Definitely my children, to make sure I leave, some lessons behind. I think that's huge. The legacy portion of it,
Right.
making sure that, and I always say that, and I've been trying to, I've been trying to get this project started actually, and just interviewing our elderly population, in interviewing our the 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 people who have such knowledge that we're not tapping into, right? So I feel like that's where we kind of need to start in a lot of ways. That's one of the projects that I like to really kind of take over too, is just kind of being able to, um, you know, pull that knowledge from our elderly at before anything else happens to them. Um, between that and as well as the just being able to spread the word of God. I mean, just his love, to be able to make sure that I'm being a good steward of for him, making sure that I'm able to pass that knowledge around is imperative. You can't have knowledge and lessons in your head, and what good is that? There's no use in that. You've been giving these lessons and blessings to bless other people, and if you're holding on to that, then you're not doing God's work. So for me, that was a huge component, making sure that I was um, being a good steward. Also making sure that I left a legacy, making sure I honored my friend, making sure that I help our youth. That is key. I've met so many young people over the course of these years, and they've needed direction. They've needed to have somebody um, to help them out in situations where they feel like nobody understands them. And
Right.
so that right there is key, because if you're not helping and you're not teaching the youth, what are you really doing? Because they're the ones who's going to inherit this. You know what I mean? The earth. So give them the tools that they need. I wanted to be the adult that I wished I had as a young girl, because I felt like I didn't have anybody when I was young. An adult to really talk to. I didn't really have that. And so I wanted to make sure that I was that person for other young women who didn't have that. I wanted to be that person. I wanted to be that person to I want to continue to be that person, in that sense, that is that helpful person, to be able to give them the knowledge to get them through these difficult situations that they may not feel like they're equipped to deal with. And I don't want them to give up. That's a big thing. You don't want them to feel like, the youth to feel as though there's no hope. Because if there's no hope, then you have nothing to lose. I've been in a point in my life where I felt like I don't care, right? I don't care. I'll do whatever I want to do. I really don't care. I understand what it takes when you get to that point. I understand what it takes to get out of that too, right? And that's hard, right? Because it's a hard mindset to get out of when you start to feel desperation like that, when you just say, I don't care, I have nothing to lose. And I feel like a lot of young people feel like that. And because they didn't have anybody, because they didn't have anybody to look for, they didn't have a good role model. They didn't have someone to tell them that they're loved and that God loves them. They didn't have these resources. And so I definitely feel like that is a huge passion of mine, to be able to, as I said earlier in the interview, is the each one teach one philosophy, and making sure that I continue that on and to help as I go. Because if I'm not doing that, then what am I doing?
Right. Now, what goes through your mind when you see, obviously, young women experiencing similar situations that you've gone through in life, and you can tell that they can get through it. But they don't understand their strength. They don't understand the power, the power within the voices. So what goes through your mind? How do you allow them to dig deep within themselves to help them get out their situation?
Well, the first thing I do is start off with prayer, right? Because prayer is key. Number one, I can't. I'm not God, so I can't. I don't know what experiences God wants this person to have. So me taking too much of a proactive role and trying to usher a person's life when it's not my life, you have to be very cautious with that, right? Because maybe I can't manipulate to that point to whereas I'm living the person's life for them. They have to go through their own experiences. They have their own unique personality. They're their own person. So first off, when I see that, I have to take a step back in prayer, because it's not my will, it's his will, period. So I want to make sure I'm operating out of the right mindset, the right heart. And the second thing I do is really listen. I think a lot of times people can solve their own issues if you listen to them. they'll talk themselves into their solution. If a person will just sit and take the time to listen without trying to just over talk them and respond and try to sometimes you can try to overly motivate somebody and then it falls on deaf ears because it's like, it doesn't feel realistic to that person. They don't already have the confidence at that moment. So I think that's the second thing. I really, really listen. The third thing is I make sure I give some time, right? I want to give some time, a nice long pause to make sure that I'm taking in what they're saying and I'm not just, spouting out from my own, just my own ego or my own feelings or whatever. I need to make sure that I'm doing and saying and giving them the best course of action that works for them in their situation. And I have to look at all the elements. Again, research is key, right? You have to make sure you know who you're dealing with as much as you can to understand some of their, what is motivating them to make some of the decisions that they've been making. A lot of things obviously start at the childhood level. So you have to start to really figure out what it is that you're, what things or barriers are in place in this person's life that you can outwardly see. And also what things that you can't outwardly see, what things that you feel. I have to dig into my intuition, dig in and really, feel the person, how, put myself in their shoes as well. So there's a lot that goes to it mentally to make sure that the person's getting the best and most well-rounded advice, and that it's also realistic, right, to their circumstances, in terms of what they need at that moment too, and also breaking down what a person needs and what do they want. Two totally separate things, like totally separate things. And so I've learned that a lot of times. If when you're dealing with, a lot of people are dealing with tough situations, they find distraction, right? A lot of times they find it out. They find a way to be able to cope. They find this vice, whether the vice be smoking or the vice is, now they're out and doing something like maybe they're out drinking, or maybe they're just not being, going to school, or there's so many different things that people do, or maybe they're just always in a bad relationship. I see people who are always in a bad relationship. You go from one person to the worst person, one person who's not good to another person who's not good for you, because there's a lot of, looking for love and all of that. So there's so many situations I have to really take into account and make sure that, why is this person utilizing this vice? Or what is causing the damage? What do they really need? And a lot of times what they need to do is to start to understand what their wants and needs are. And what I do is a lot of times I start off with creating a vision board, which I'm huge on people doing,
Really?
Creating some type of, yes, creating a vision board, because if you don't know, if you can't see what you want in your mind, you can't visualize it, it's hard to achieve it. So, and then it also can kind of start to separate your wants from your needs and start to really make you figure out who it is that you are, number one, because a lot of times there's so many people that have taken on so many other people's energy that they've gotten buried. They don't even know who they are anymore. So we need to get back to, what do you want? Because a lot of times when people put vision boards up, I'm not overly critical, but I do ask, what's the root of this? Because sometimes people will put stuff on there that other people wanted. Oh, I want this big house. Oh, do you really want this big house? Or do you want or do you really want this mansion? Right. Like, or do you just want an apartment? Right. Do you want a house? Or do what, and I'm not downplaying anybody, because if you want a mansion, that's what you want. But what's the root cause? Because sometimes people want so much more and they don't have the basic stuff, right? You don't have food, clothing, and shelter now, but you want the mansion. You know what I'm saying? Like, and there's nothing wrong with that, but get to the basics. What are your wants versus your needs? So just making sure that the realistic viewpoints and the basic needs also are taken care of is huge. So it's definitely it's a process when I'm mentoring someone and I see them in a place where I can see the potential and all of those things, but I do not just run off of potential for people. I run off of also what their hunger is. What do they want? Right. I have to be honest. I have to be realistic too with when I figure out what they want, if it may not be what I want for them. And I have to go with what they want. I can't always say what I want for that person. Right. Because what I want is not what, I can't always steer it. I can't steer it that way. So that's one of the things I've done is relinquish that control, right? And also that the outcome of that. I can't be overly, I'm not, I want it to work. I'll give a person some advice. I'll make sure that, I'm mentoring, I'm checking up on you. At the same time, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make a person drink out of it, the horse drink rather. So, there's only but so much I've realized that I can do as an individual. The person has to want to do the work themselves. They have to want it. And so I feel like when I look at a person, they have that potential. I just kind of like, okay, well, let's get there. You know what I mean? Let's go. And that's my personality. I'm not here to play games with anybody because I don't have time to play with people. You know what I mean? And I think that's like kind of surprises people when I become the mentor because they realize that even though I'm pleasant, I don't play. Like I'm not here to play with people. That's not, I don't have time for it. I really I don't have time for it. And that's really, honestly, I have a very disciplined personality, like not personality, discipline. I'm a disciplined person and my personality is very, I like these things done a certain way. I like things done in a way that makes sense to me. So I feel like, I definitely do what I feel like is best for the mentee. At the same time, I'm not here to, I'm not going to sit and play with somebody all day if they don't want to change and they don't really want to make a difference within their own life. I don't waste my time with that either. It's only but so much I can do with anybody who doesn't want it. You know what I mean? And that's because you may have to just learn that lesson. May have to go through the hard part. I know I had to like, in a lot of ways. Like sometimes, sometimes you have to go through it, and there's no, you can try all that you can, but a person has to go through the pain to be able to really understand the full scope of their journey. So, and pain is a part of life. It is. So it's not, I can't always shield somebody from being uncomfortable. They want to play games. It's like, okay, like, all right, I'll catch you the next time the pain hits you. And maybe you'll be ready then. Right. But I can't chase you around. So that's kind of where I'm at when it comes to mentoring. Like, oh no. Little drill sergeant over here. I know.
Right.
I know. I do. I'm like, I expect order.
Yes.
And it's telling that that's what I got, that's my background is law and justice. So like, it's not so far off.
It's all connected.
It's all connected. You see the 5 a.m. If somebody goes on my Instagram page, you go see the 5 a.m. workouts. It's all connected. Like,
discipline.
It's productive. You got to be productive. You know what I'm saying? I think that productiveness is important because faith without works is dead, like they say. So, got to get up, get things done. And so but I'm so excited about this journey in itself. I feel like there's so much. When we first started out, we started to speak about 2020 and how things are unfolding. And, there's been so much going on, but I feel like there's just so much. They say throw 2020 away. I keep hearing that. Throw 2020 away. This has been the worst year for people.
Right.
And yes, it has. It has been a very awful year. At the same time, everything happens for a purpose. Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm standing at And so as I go into finish writing the second book, I'm going to speak probably not so much on this particular 2020 in itself, but just some of the lessons that, have been taken from this, and just kind of really showing how nothing is permanent, right? Everything is conditional in this world, period. You know what I mean? When you're trying to hold on to things that are conditional, nothing's going to help. Nothing's going to work. It's not, it's meant to pass away. Everything's meant to pass away, period. That's just the world that we live in. So we have to be able to take that and know that we got to be able to be resilient, and go with the ebbs and flows, take action. Critical thinking needs to come into play, and we need to take action where it's necessary. Right. Whether it be you getting up, changing, you realize that you're in a funk, get up, work out, meditate, pray, all those things. There's some tips to, would you find yourself in that funk, of 2020, but, you can definitely find some ways to be able to, be productive, maybe even make a hobby a business. There's so much going on that you can do. So, it's really about being active and making sure that you're doing something every day to really work towards building a better you, right. and that in itself, you being your best you is going to rub off on your neighbor, yep. You helping your neighbor, that's part of it. You being a good steward, of God, and making sure you're in alignment, and that's all you can do, because everything is conditional. So, it is what it is. Keep moving. That's all you can do.
You got all the gems.
Aren't you sweet?
now, speaking of the gems, in your book, Droppin Jewelz, I love the format of it. I love the story. And then after each chapter, literally you give us the gems, and which are relative to the story and obviously relative to people's lives in general. So a couple of them I jotted down, and I want you to briefly expand on them for me so people can understand like the type of gems you're putting in this book, and why they should get it, and why they should ensure that they focus on each end chapter so they take it all in. So
yes,
the first one, place yourself around people who want to see you win.
Yes. So it's critical. And that's a great gem that you picked out, placing yourself around people who want to see you win. It's imperative when you're going in a direction that you're going with people who are complementary, right, to your journey. When you go with people who aren't going to complement your journey, and they're going to be a distraction, in essence, then you find yourself in a situation where you've taken time away from your goal, because you've been distracted by this particular person who was never on your journey with you, never fully wanted to walk with you on this path. And it takes you in a different element. And also keep in mind, when you're with somebody who wants to see you win, and so on and so forth, they're not jealous of your wins. They want you to win. A lot of times you can find people who are jealous, and when you're jealous, people can do so many hurtful things to get the other person's attention, because they're hurting, because they didn't get it. They didn't do it. You know what I mean? And so they wind up trying to put you in, bring you to their energy. They're pull you in essence, and become like an energy vampire. So you wind up not being able to put yourself fully into your goals, into your path again. There's so many different things that can occur when you're with people who are not fully invested in your journey, that can just knock you off. So why deal with it? Why deal with that type of energy that's going to, in essence, knock you off of your path? And it's inevitable. That it'll happen. So it's kind of one of those things where you have to think about what types of people are you going to have in your life? What types of people do you want to walk with? Start to really assess your circle and see who you're giving your time to. And if you find yourself in a situation where you're gossiping and all of those things, and you're, you know, you find yourself in a situation where you may be the person that's the distraction. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, you know, figure out, you know, so it's kind of, these are the things where you have to really, these are the start to your journey of being, of really loving yourself, right? These are steps that you have to take when you love yourself. You have to be around people who care about you and that you care about, not these frenemies and, you know, people who are, you know, poisoning you. Why keep running to the danger, right? If you know it's there. It's time to just, you know, get yourself in a position where not only the other people want to see you in, but let's start with you wanting to see you in, and
Yes,
you, right? So yeah, so definitely that.
So the next is, you cannot receive the new holding on to the old.
Yes, yes, yes. And that's where that meditation comes in about letting go, right? Where we spoke about earlier of being able to let it go, because everything in this world is conditional, right? So when you think about that, it kind of puts things in a different um, perspective. And that's the big thing. You have to know what's serving you and what's not. And once you're able to really do the pros and cons of that, of what's serving you and what's not, you're able to make better decisions for yourself.
I think this last one is so important right now for everyone. And that is, the world does not define you. You define the world.
Yes. Yes, because we have the power to commence change, right? Everything is okay. When I think of the world, it's all one consciousness, right? One voice at the end of the day. We all are connected, whether or not we want to believe it. And so when we even think about um, everything given to us was a thought, right? And so why can't we make our own new thought? The Constitution was a thought, right? The Bill of Rights was a thought in somebody's head
Right.
first, you know, and then they made it turn into to an action. All these things, you know, happen, and then other people were like, okay, yeah, this works. I think this will be a good idea. Okay, you know, then people agreed on it. So you know, there's so much that you can do to commence change just as an individual, because we're all unique personalities, and we've all been given a unique point of view on certain scenarios that's going to be beneficial, that can be beneficial rather, um, and furthering something. Whereas when you're agreeing upon, you know how they say two or more agree, then that's when God is here, right? So, you know, you have this idea, you share it with your friend, cousin, stranger, whoever. Sometimes the strangers are your biggest supporters. However,
Right.
you do it, right? Um, and and then all of a sudden, they tell another person, then they tell another person, and now this is the thing. You maybe made a move. Maybe it's a movement. Look at the Me Too movement, right? That was started out with one thought, and then it became a full on movement, and it changed. It changed things, right? It changed the way people were viewed, and made certain people be held accountable.
Right.
When I look at what's going on now, with all that's happening with George Floyd. I mean, let's look at one person making a change. You know, when his daughter Gianna came on, spoke. She said, "My daddy changed the world," right? And that was so powerful. The fact that one person can change the world. You have the power within you, and understanding that you are a unique individual, and that because you're unique is on top of the fact that um, because you're unique, you're here to give something special that collectively, you know, it's going to be helpful to us as humans. We all have something to give, whatever that may be. That's going to change the course of somebody's life, and that's just it. Period. No matter what, we're going to change the course of somebody's life just because of who we are. right? We do it every day when we interact with people and we make these choices. So really just understanding your uniqueness, understanding your power, understanding that, you were here for a purpose. You're here um, to be able to impart that knowledge and that idea to be able to make some type of a difference, a change, whatever that is, a small ripple leads into the ocean, right? That's what we hear, right? A small ripple of change, and everybody is able to make that ripple, and everybody does. Everybody has that footprint, that unique footprint, and we need you to be able to um, express yourself, express your ideas and your thoughts and your goals and your dreams and share with others, because you don't know how much of a change and how powerful that you truly are, to others, and sometimes even to yourself. You got to take that step back and say, I have a lot more than I once thought I did, to give. So really start to dig deep and like we talked about before, prayer, meditation, exercise, um, research research ways to really improve yourself and to figure out who you are. That's really what it boils down to. Figure out who you are. We're always trying to do that. Trying to figure out, it's because we're always changing. We're ever changing. So who you were 2 years ago isn't who you are now. You're totally different in a lot of ways, you've grown. You know what I mean? You've grown and certain things have changed. So understanding this is a constant reassessment, knowing that at any point, 2 years ago, you may not feel like you could change the world, but maybe today you can. Let's look at all the people today who are changing the world, and they probably never thought that they would be in this situation, but they are changing the world. And, it's a beautiful thing to see that people recognizing their own power in a situation where they've been crushed. They've had a lot of their again, foots have been on necks. Okay. Yes. So this gives us a different way to understand your value as people. Now
what's next for you?
Well, what's next for me is I'm not sure if you are familiar, but I have a podcast, the What's Really Real podcast, and we tape out in New York. And so I have that going on. In addition, I have the second book that I'm writing. So that has been really, really, really taking up the bulk of my time. In addition to mentoring and being a mother. I'm a grandmother as well, mind you. So,
oh, wow.
So yes, I know. I'm like, so it's just been, it's been a whirlwind. It's been very, very busy, but I would say right now, my main focus is to make sure that I get this second book done. And that's really, what I've been focused on more than anything else right now. And that may change after this is done. Obviously, the focus is going to change, but I'm trying to keep my head in the game and knock it out and get it done because I know that that right there is important to somebody. It's going to be important to somebody to that lesson, and I want to make sure that I capture that moment. And when you feel that feeling, you got to write, you got to do it. So, you know what I mean? You just got to do it. So that's where I'm at right now. Is I'm in inquisitive mode. I'm in writing mode. I'm in meditation. Deep thought. Mode. I'm usually in deep thought anyway, but this is a different type of deep thought that I'm in at this point. Just trying to make sure that I give the message that is the most clear message possible. And I think that's always the goal of writing, making sure that, your message is very clear and it really touches, touches someone's life. So That's my focus. That's my toil. That is the daily toil. Goodness, it's a lot, but it's definitely something that is I'm excited about. So yeah.
Before we go, how was life as a grandmother?
I mean, I'm young, right? So being a young grandmother is a younger grandmother rather. I'm not a spring chicken now, but I'm not old. Okay. And I was like, so but but being a grandmother is been very interesting. I had the kids actually um so they're amazing. They're amazing. They're so cute. It's a that part is great. I think it's the part of you knowing that you have an obligation, right? So to me, I love being a grandmother, but at the same time, like I had to I had to chill out being the grandmother for like this. My oldest grandson is 5 now. So when he first was born, I was ridiculous. Like it was bad. You're not holding the baby's head up.
Oh no!
Yes, I was. I was.
No, you didn't.
It was me. Put the baby's head up. Wrap the baby. You don't have no socks. I was out of control, and I was bad. I was like, and I didn't even recognize myself. And it was like, hold on, calm down, Kendra. So, over time now, I have my second grandson. He just turned 1, and I'm chill now. Like I'm calm. So it's been it's been a whirlwind being a grandmother because at first you really feel like it's your child. Like I didn't even know it was going to feel like that. It's like literally your kid. You just like, all right, somebody just had the child, but it's mine. Like I really felt like I was like the oversight. Like I was like, oh no. Now, mind you, my son and his girl, they don't live, they have their own place. They got their own lives. It didn't matter. My son is old. He's in his late 20s. So, it's just having to kind of take back that the reign of that, the control of not being like that. It was like, it's calming now. It's great now. I feel wonderful, but boy, oh boy, I would say that first year with the first grandbaby was,
That's hilarious.
I was like, I know they were like, oh my goodness, Mom, leave me alone.
Right.
So, and I was always buying something every 5 seconds, like, okay, the baby needs this. Yes, spoiled, so spoiled, couldn't do nothing. You better not yell at him. You better. I was the grandmother where you like, get it, let the baby have it. So, it's like I said, I've chilled out a lot, and I definitely enjoy. I enjoy now being able to, spend my beautiful time with my beautiful babies, and then be able to say, "Mom and Dad, come pick them up."
Right. Come get them.
It's a different freedom. It's a different freedom that it's definitely a different freedom, but it's an experience that I just, it's something that you have to actually go through. And, you might, it's just some things you have to go through to understand it. And I feel like I had to, really understand how my probably parents felt, you know what I mean? Or, really understand the thought process that goes behind it. And it gave me a better understanding of my parents, of my grandparents, of just what the feeling is like, right? Because it's a totally different feeling than you maybe had thought that you would have at times, and it's very protective. Sometimes it can be overprotective. Whether or not your kids are amazing, it doesn't matter. It's just the fact that you really do feel like that's my baby. Right. That's grandma's baby, So, so yeah, but it's been beautiful. Thank you for asking me. Thank you.
Wow. Now tell everybody where they can reach out to you. Obviously cop the book, to get all the gems, and just get in contact with you.
Great. My contact on Instagram is Justice Jewelz with a Z, JUSTUSJEWELZ. And I'm also on Facebook, Justice Jewelz and Droppin Jewelz. I have a page on there, actually 2 pages on there on Facebook. So you can also connect with me there, as well as going to my website. And so you can purchase my book and also to get an overview of some of the other services that I provide as far as mentoring and classes and workshops and so forth at www.droppin, DROPPIN,
All right, this has been a Fiction Addiction podcast, and this was Kendra Hall. Kendra, thank you so much for coming through and dropping these gems on us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure, and I hope you have an amazing night.
Thank you for joining us on the Fiction Addiction Podcast. Make sure you visit fictionaddictionpodcast.com for links on everything we talked about today, as well as awesome resources, additional tips, and fiction addiction merchandise.